Okay, well, with no further ado, let's get started. The question in front of you may seem to many of you like a overstatement or an overclaim. My hope is that by the end of the night tonight, we may have got you excited about the opportunities to increase your practice values actually by more than that amount of money. Um, We'll be talking about 7 different things that can put more money in your pocket for retirement, and I'm sure at least a couple of them will be appropriate for most of you. Joining me tonight, I'm thrilled that, and you may be able to see them on your screens there, Judy Wu, who's a Henry Schein brand specialist, is joining me tonight, and she'll be covering some of the material we're going to go through, as is Jamie Sullivan, who's a digital CAD/CAM specialist. And if you don't know what CAD/CAM is, I'm sure he will explain that when the time comes. So Judy, Jamie, thank you and welcome. The other thing I wanted to say is that there's a handy Q&A feature on Zoom. If you move your cursor, if you're on a computer, sort of around the outer fringe, often it pops up at the top or at the bottom. You'll see it opens up a window that, or a little section that allows you to either chat or do Q&A. Please use the Q&A. We will do our very best to answer your questions throughout. At the end of the session, we will have a audio-based Q&A session, but if you stick them in as we go, we'll try to address them in real time. So what are we going to cover in the next hour and a half or hour and 15 minutes, depending upon the questions we get? We're going to talk about 2 things. The first thing is what determines the value of your practice. And then the second thing we're going to talk about is basically 6 ways to increase the value of your practice before you sell. And the tax savings that you see on the screen in front of you here is a way of keeping more of the money you get when you sell your practice. So that's the agenda for this evening. Let me give you a quick bit of background on me, which may be helpful and relevant just to understand where my comments come from. The reason I do this work is I am married to a dentist and have been for longer than either of us would like to admit, I think. But my wife Maureen was a dentist in Bolton, Ontario. She has now retired, but I used to be in the corporate world. She had her practice appraised and invited me to the appraisal meeting. And to me as a business person, the appraisal made absolutely no sense. And I was somebody who'd always wanted my own business and said to myself, well, heck, Bill, if this isn't the best opportunity you've seen, you're never going to have your own business. So I bought Tier 3 along with some minority partners, which at the time was literally a mom and pop brokerage operated by Barry Howie and Mary Jane Howie off a kitchen table in Oakville. That was back in 2009. And in the following 12 years, we built it to a coast-to-coast brokerage. We attracted the interest of Henry Schein, and I sold the business to Henry Schein last January. So I have done a transition, much like I try to help my clients do. And it's been a tremendously positive thing because Henry Schein's all about trying to help dentists throughout their career, from the day they get into dental school right through until when they hang up their drill for the last time, and integrating the brokerage business with the rest of Henry Schein has been nothing but a positive experience and a win. And you're going to see that in life tonight, or see that live tonight. So let's take a look then at the first area, which is how are practices valued? There are a lot of misconceptions about this, and it's changed a lot in the last 10, 12 years. This certainly isn't how anybody was doing it when my wife's practice was appraised. It was one of the first innovations we introduced. Some of you will have heard this term EBITDA or EBITDA. And some of you may even know what it is. It is an acronym. It stands for earnings, or profit before interest paid on any loans, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So it's basically the cash flow coming out of a business, in this case, your business, before you pay the government the taxes you owe them. And it is the basis of the value of your practice. And we're going to go through a simplistic example today. That in reality, when we're doing an appraisal for somebody, it's more detailed than this. But this example I'm going to use to both explain EBITDA to you, and then we're going to use it throughout the presentation to show you the leverage you have to build your practice value. This is what's called an income statement for a practice. Your accountant probably prepares something that looks quite a bit like this for you. It's probably a little more detailed, but you can see at the top here, you've got revenue in this practice. It's an example practice, but fairly representative of many practices we see. Revenue totals $1 million, and that's broken into hygiene in this case of 300,000, dentistry of 630,000, and lab of 70,000. That's what's making up revenue. Now, costs. This practice is running pretty good staff costs. It's about 270,000. Or 27%. That's an average staff cost for a practice. Because you pay your accountant to minimize taxes, you likely are paying yourself a bunch of money out of your professional corporation if you've got one. And you're likely paying your spouse. You might even be paying your kids, and they've got to be doing real work. But interestingly enough, in COVID times, it's easy to do real work from at home, isn't it? For everybody other than the dentist. So this practice is paying about 18.5% to the owner and their spouse, rent's running 7%, supplies that, no bookkeeper's perfect. Those supplies, it's entirely possible the new big screen TV for the rec room somehow got captured in there, and who knows, maybe several Costco orders for the house somehow got mixed up with Costco orders for the practice. So supplies are showing up as 9.5%. The rest, in this case, lab 70,000, you'll see that's the same as the revenue. So this is a practice using external lab. And we'll talk about the leverage there in a moment. Then there are a bunch of things that your accountant puts in there, either because you're a dentist, and it's a legit expense for a dentist, or to help reduce your taxes. Most of you will be writing off some of your car. In this case, it's $2,000. This is a conservative accountant. You're writing off meals and entertainment that I'm sure are all promotional meals and entertainment with staff, referral sources, and patients. But if some of your friends, dinners with friends end up in there, bookkeeping mistakes happen. That $7,000 trip to Vegas you've got planned this year for a convention, well, that's a legit business expense, but it's not a real cost of operating your practice. Your license and fees for your provincial association and regulator, those are real business expenses, but they're expenses of being a dentist, not owning a practice. You're not paying those for your associates if you've got them. Then we've got amortization of 40,000. This person still owns money on a bank loan. They've got interest of 20,000 and other expenses of 20,000. So total costs of 787 and income of 213,000. Those of you with good math skills will immediately realize that's 21.3% of the $1 million in revenue. That's a pretty representative practice, but it's not the EBITDA. The first thing to calculate EBITDA is we remove things that aren't inherent costs of the practice. So you can see here that we've taken the owner and spouse's wage out. By the way, if you see me looking this way, it's not because I'm distracted. I've got the presentation over there. The rent and occupancy, absolutely a real cost. We leave that there. Supplies have been adjusted downwards by 5,000 that were those bookkeeping mistakes that ended up with some personal expenses and supplies. Lab, real cost 70,000. We have removed auto, meals and entertainment, convention, and education, and license and fees. Because as I said a moment ago, if you have an associate, you're not paying their RCBSO or whichever province you're in fees. So it's cost of being a dentist, not a cost of owning a practice. Amortization, interest, and other costs are real business expenses there in there. The key thing, and you'll see it down at the bottom here, is we need to pay you, or for that matter, any associates in your practice, to be the dentist in the practice before looking at the earnings or income that's left over for the owner of the business. So we pay the doctor 40%, you saw up here dental billings of 630,000, 40% of that is 252,000. We deduct that and we've got income after fair market rate for the owner, dentist, or associates of 168,000. That is still not yet EBITDA. To get to the EBITDA, you can see that we've removed the amortization because it's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So we've taken both amortization and interest out. And you can see now EBITDA is 228,000 or 22.8%, which actually is about bang on the average for profit practices we see across the country. That's the EBITDA. Now, after a highly detailed accounting lesson, many of you are going, hey, well what's that mean to me, Bill? We will, throughout the presentation, be using a slightly scaled back version of that, but you can see it's exactly the same numbers. You're going to see this example again and again as we look at how you can improve your EBITDA. Why would you want to improve your EBITDA? Because your practice value when you go to sell is going to be primarily driven by the EBITDA times an EBITDA multiple. It's not quite as simple as that. People consider reasonable expectations of future EBITDA, not your EBITDA. We use a range of tools to quantify that, as do other buyers. But the basic concept is as EBITDA goes up, so does your practice value. So here's a pretty simple example. Here's our example practice making 228,000 after paying the dentist in EBITDA. And we've applied a 6 times earnings or EBITDA multiple. So this practice at a 6 times multiple is worth $1,370,000. That 6 times multiple is a pretty representative multiple in the marketplace today. It can be influenced by using a good broker who can bring more competition to bear and get people to bid prices up. In a conventional sale, the range is probably, for most areas of the country, 5 to 7 times. It's a bit higher in urban Ontario than if you're coming to us from Atlantic Canada, but 5 to 7 is a decent range. We've chosen the midpoint 6. If you are selling to a DSO, a dental services organization like Dental Corp or 123 Dentist, higher multiples are profitable if you qualify and meet their criteria, but you're signing on to an earnings guarantee or what they call earnings participation in that model. We can talk about that later if you've got questions. The key thing is this. If I'd been showing you this presentation 6 months ago, that multiple would have been 6.5 times. And I would have told you practices are generally selling for 6 to almost 8 times. The multiples somebody will pay to buy your practice fall as interest rates rise. The simple reason is that as interest rates go up, the cash flow coming out of the business, more and more of it is used by the buyer to pay interest, and there's less and less available to repay principal. So hopefully we will see interest rates fall in the future and we'll see multiples go up. But the reality is, just like your house probably isn't worth today what it was worth 9 months ago, your practice isn't either. And that's not because of anything you've done. It's simply because of macroeconomic conditions in the marketplace. So if that is concerning or disappointing news to you, the good news is all you've lost in purchase price is probably about half a year of earnings. So when you practice 6 more months and you're pretty much even. It may also motivate you to pay attention as we talk about how you can increase the EBITDA. Because while you're not really going to increase the multiple on your own, that's up to the market, you can absolutely impact the EBITDA in your practice. And that's what we're here today to sort of help you understand and identify things that you can do. So let's talk about those things you can do. First one, this probably comes as no surprise to many of you, is to build your hygiene program. What you see on your screen now is a hygiene benchmarking tool we use every time we appraise a practice. And it shows the hygiene billings per hygiene patient per year. This shows you a representative range of practices from a bizarre practice that was billing as little as $45. We have no idea how. But a couple down around the $100, which is basic. It's not even a full normal recall appointment. And up to as high as $650. The average, depending upon what province you're in, will vary a bit, but generally is around $270 per patient per year. But that's not per total patient in your practice. That's per patient that's come for a hygiene appointment in that year or 12-month period. This is a real practice that my partner and I were working with, about 2.5 months ago now. And their billings were very low at $161 per patient. Clearly moving those upwards has the potential to significantly increase value in the practice. We go one step further and in trying to understand why that is. It's nice to know you've got an issue, but understanding what to do about it is always the key. So this next slide, shows you an additional level of benchmarking we do when we do appraisals. And what this shows is how the practice that had those low hygiene billings, that's the blue bar on your screen, compares to an average practice, which is the yellow bar. And we're looking at 3 things: the units of scaling per appointment, the units of scaling per patient per year, and the average recall frequency. So units per appointment are low. They're doing about 1.3 compared to an average of 2.6. You can see that in your own practice pretty easily. The units per patient per year, you can see they're even further behind the average. And the reason is because their recall frequency is not very good at all. Their recall frequency is at 8.8. That's almost 9 every 9 months. An average practice, surprisingly, isn't as good as most people think. Every time we present an appraisal, I ask the dentist, so what do you think your average recall frequency is? 90% of the time, they guess low because they're telling me what they would like to be the case, or maybe what they think the staff are doing, not what's actually happening. And so an average practice would be around 7.4. But if you're taking longer to get people into your practice and doing far fewer procedures when they're there, obviously your billings per patient are going to be quite low. So this is the kind of way we tease apart a hygiene program to help people identify where they need to focus. Sometimes they've got a great recall frequency, but they're just not delivering as much scaling. Sometimes it's their fees. My colleagues at Henry Schein have some great tools to analyze whether your staff are really charging full fee guide, but it can really help. Now, what would a 15% improvement in recall frequency do? We're here to talk about how to build your practice value. So this is getting that 8.8 a monthly recall frequency down to about 7.7. So not a huge change, still not to where probably most patients need to be for adequate oral health. you can see how it impacts EBITDA. Hygiene billings have gone up 15% from 300,000 to 345. Total billings, of course, are up by the same 45,000. Staff costs, well, we factored in an extra couple of days of hygiene here because we were doing more hygiene. So we've got the wage cost for that. Supply costs are going to go up because the hygienists are seeing more patients. So revenue's up by 45,000, costs are up by about 23,000. So EBITDA's up by about 32,000. At the 6 times multiple we were using as an example earlier, this practice is now worth $1.5 million. That's a $130,000 increase in practice value, or a 9% increase, simply by improving recall frequency by 15%. That's the kind of leverage that EBITDA has in terms of impacting your selling price. What is a relatively modest change can have a much more magnified impact on the value of your practice when you go to sell. Of course, I work for Henry Schein now. We've got a range of tools that can help you with this. The Dentrix software or the Lighthouse software are really good at helping you manage your recall system. If you're not comfortable with that your software is helping you the way you want, talk to your Henry Schein sales rep. They can arrange for you to see what more Dentrix or Lighthouse could do to help improve your hygiene program. That's one of 7 things we're going to talk to you about. The next thing, and this one sort of, yeah, well, duh, Bill, building your patient base. The key thing is, it's hard to build a patient base if you don't know how many you've got. And less than 1 in 3 dentists can really tell us how many patients they've got. They can go to their software and see how many people are classified as active. But that's a measure of front desk behavior, whether the staff have classified them as active or not. With the exception of one software brand out there, it's not a measure of patient behavior. When we do an appraisal, we go into the software and we look at how many patients have been there for 1 or more procedures in a 12-month period. The chart you see in front of you is something we do in every appraisal. The dark blue bars are total patients. It's not total patients visits, it's total unique patients. The light green are the number of people who have had 1 or more hygiene visits, and the orange are the new patients. This practice is actually pretty good, isn't it? I mean, they've got a lot of patients. They had what you expect, a blip in 2021. This is 12 months ending January 31st. It's a real example. We did the patient count on January 31st. So January 31st, 2021 included the COVID shutdown period. So of course it's down, new patient flows down, but they recovered pretty well. And you can see that they've recovered even better since then. Most of you will have a very good handle on the orange number, or the orange number, or the new patient number in your practice, because you see a lot of them. So you've got a good sense of how many new patients you're seeing a week or a month. What I would ask you is, how many are you losing? And one of the tools we use in every appraisal we do is, if we've got the total patient count for 3 years running on a 12-month basis, and we've got the new patient count, it's very easy mathematically to work out the attrition or delinquency. Now, in this case, not surprisingly, in that 2021 fiscal year, or 12-month period, which included the COVID shutdown, they may have attracted 275 patients, but they lost 620. In the most recent period, they only lost 10. So you average that out over the 2-year period, it's about 315, a little less than 10% of the patient base. That's not bad, but it's not great. Average practice should be experiencing no more than 8% annual patient attrition. This practice is at 10. So when I tell you to build your patient base, many of you will focus on getting more new patients. And I would suggest you're focused on the harder thing to do. It is far easier to keep an existing patient than find a new one. And let's look at the math around keeping a existing patient. This shows you a practice over 5 years where everything's totally static. They start each year with 1,500 patients. They lose 10%. The example we just looked at, except the total numbers are different. But they get 10% new. So the new patient flow is offset by the lost patients, and the ending patient count stays right the same. This happens to be a completely average practice, which is billing $667 per patient per year. The number I showed you earlier was just hygiene. This is total billings. So it's billing $1 million a year. This could be our Pat sample example that we're using. Indeed, I'll show you how it would impact Pat's practice in a second. Let's look now at the power of reducing attrition or delinquency. The only thing that's changed in the first 3 lines here is instead of losing 10% of their patients a year, they're now only losing 8. They're still getting 10% new each year. They're losing 8, and you can see what happens over that 5-year period. The patient base grows significantly because it's compounding. You've got 1,656 patients compared to 1,500. What do those additional 156 patients get you? They get you an extra 100,000 in billings. What does that do for the value of your practice? Well, let's look at it. Billings in this practice were up 10%. That would be spread between hygiene, dentistry, lab, and so our total revenue is up 10%, so are each of hygiene, dentistry, and lab. Staff costs, we've been extreme here and taken staff costs up a full 10%. Normally, you would get some economies of scale, but just to make this a conservative example, we've taken staff costs up 10%. Supply costs are going to go up 10%. And the doctor's compensation, there's 10% more dentistry going on. That's going up. But look what's happened to our EBITDA. It's gone from 228 to 260. Simply by getting attrition and delinquency down from 10% to 8% a year. The value's now $1,560,000, value's up 190,000 or 14%. And again, that's illustrating the leverage that small changes or modest changes can have in the money you'll have when you retire. And while I'll talk about more than this later, $190,000 in practice value is worth a heck of a lot more than $190,000 in income you're making in your practice. Because if you're structured right, it's entirely tax-free. And even if you're not structured right, it's going to be taxed as a capital gain, which means half the income tax you have on your income. So call it 200,000 because the math's hard otherwise. 200,000 in practice value, if you're selling and paying capital gains tax, is like 300,000 in income. And if you're selling tax-free because you're properly structured, it's like 400,000 in income. So let's move on to area number 3, and I'm soon going to be able to involve my Henry Schein colleagues. The building your ortho revenue can be very revealing. More and more dentists are bringing orthodontics in-house, or some of the ortho in-house, using a clear aligner program. There's a very well-known brand that I might have used in my past presentations before joining Henry Schein, but Judy's going to tell you about some of the real benefits. They've got me persuaded of why you might want to consider Reveal rather than another brand. But before we do that, let me show you the economic leverage. But if you doubt me, go listen to one of the Dental Corp analysts' calls. They're all on their website. There's a link there. You can listen to what they are telling financial analysts, the people who are opining on the value of their stock. Every single analyst call I've listened to, they talk about their ortho acceleration program. And that is simply bringing clear aligners into their practices. If they didn't think that would be driving the value of their business, they wouldn't be talking about it. You can get the same benefit too. So let's look here at our Pat sample example and what clear aligners could do. This example is 18 clear aligner cases priced at $5,000 a case. That's $90,000 in annual revenue. And at least so our revenue's up 90,000. Lab costs are going to go up. Clear aligners are not inexpensive, so we've taken lab costs up 36,000. But you can see that our EBITDA in this case is up to 260,500. At a 6x multiple, we're at $1,560,000. That is another almost $200,000 increase in the value of your practice, plus additional benefits to your patient base, which might help with the building the patient base that we were talking about earlier. And just like bringing ortho in-house, and Judy will talk more about that in a minute, can help. You can do the same thing with other specialties you're referring out if you've got a large enough patient base. Certainly lots of people are either bringing in an associate to do things like implants, oral surgery, perio, or bringing in a denturist to do dentures, or they're learning to do them themselves. Those have similar kinds of impacts, indeed sometimes more impact than what we saw bringing ortho in-house. Before we jump to Judy, I want to talk about another thing Judy and the team she works with can help you a bunch with. The fourth area to build the value of your practice significantly is supply costs. Best practices today are in the 6 to 7% of revenue range. You can benchmark it if you get your provincial association benchmarking study that you can see where you stack up. You can look at it yourself easily enough. 7% would be average, 7.5% actually. The keys to getting this: set a budget and track it. Consider house brands that meet your quality standards. Under no circumstances do we want you to reduce the quality you're delivering your patients or do things you're uncomfortable with. But there are almost certainly going to be some opportunities for you. And your Schein rep can help you with that. Before I turn it over to one of them to talk a bit more about it, let's look at the impact. And by now you're all pretty conversant with how this works, I think. So here we've taken supply costs in this practice from the 90,000 it was at down to 7.5%. That's average. You can see that earnings have therefore gone up $15,000, but with that 6x earnings multiple that gets applied to that, our value's up $90,000. It's not an area many of you pay attention to, I know from doing lots and lots of work with dentists, but it's an area that, I mean, think of what more you could do with $90,000 after tax in terms of vacations when you go to retire. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Judy, who will be able to talk to you a little bit more. And Judy, we missed and have your colleague's name on the slide. That's my bad. So everyone out there, the word Colin now is Judy, and at least we kept the last name close. It's Wu, not Wong, but take it away, Judy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. So unlike what the slide says today, I'm not Colin Wong, but my name is Judy Wu, and I am the Henry Schein brand specialist at Henry Schein in British Columbia. And I have the great opportunity to manage a very interesting and growing part of the company. So the portfolio that I manage consists of some of the brands you see on the screen, and the ones we'll be highlighting in today's webinar will be the Henry Schein brand private label products, as well as Reveal clear aligners. And these are fantastic areas to start with when looking for ways to improve different aspects within your practice. Thanks, Bill. As Bill mentioned, bringing ortho into your current practice is something that can really increase the valuation of your practice. Now, for some of you, this may not be too relevant to you, as I'm sure some of you are already offering clear aligners in-house, which is fantastic. I think this would be more for dentists that are currently not offering ortho and may be interested in introducing that to their practice. Now, within the portfolio, I cover both traditional ortho with Henry Schein, as well as Reveal clear aligners. And what I will say is that if you are currently not offering ortho, I would strongly recommend approaching the ortho space with clear aligners, as it would be a much more simpler kind of way of dabbling and getting your feet wet within the ortho space, as you'll be able to lean on the experience and knowledge of our ortho team and ortho technicians that essentially help build these treatment plans for you to review. Whereas tackling traditional ortho can be more complex and can be a bit of a longer learning curve. So if you're looking to jump into ortho and include it into your business, my strong suggestion would be to use a clear aligner therapy solution like Reveal. So Reveal is the clear aligner system offered at Henry Schein. And with so many different clear aligner systems in the market today, I'm sure some of the questions you have are, why Reveal? What is different about Reveal and why is it better? And that's what we'll be getting into. Firstly, I do believe Reveal is best suited for the new dentist getting into clear aligner therapy. And so we'll jump into these areas and give you a high level view as to why. Bill, if you don't mind, skipping to the next slide. Thank you. So one of the differences between Reveal and some of the other brands in the market today are the absence of attachments, as you can see in the picture. We have found that number one, clinicians don't like putting these on. They are time consuming and they tend to fall off, which results in more chair time. And number two, patients are not in love with them either, just from a more aesthetic point of view. So what Reveal has done is essentially evolved clear aligner therapy and has created a clear aligner where we can move teeth with less attachments. Now, keep in mind, there are certain movements where we can't get around using attachments, for example, like if you're looking to extrude a tooth. But the big improvement is really moving away from these attachments when we can do make those movements without attachments. And it's quite incredible to see the results that we can get from this aligner system. I'll move on to slide 4, Belle. Thank you. One of the other great parts of this product would be, as you can see from this picture, the Reveal clear aligners are extremely clear. So this slide compares our Reveal clear aligners to the leading competitor. And as you can see, the difference in clarity. It is also guaranteed not to stain over the course of treatment. And although this is not a clinical thing, it is very important for patient compliance. So our team actually took it upon ourselves to conduct a little science experiment and to test how true this statement really is. So we dunked our Reveal clear aligners and the leading clear aligner into coffee for 8 hours, and here were the results. So as you can see, huge difference there. And keep in mind, when patients are wearing aligners, they're supposed to wear these aligners for 22 hours a day for 2 weeks for each tray. So you can imagine they can get a little bit gnarly. So this is a feature that really promotes patient compliance and is great for coffee drinkers, wine drinkers, and even people who eat foods containing turmeric spice. So from just a aesthetic perspective and patient compliance, this is a huge selling point for sure. Now, in terms of case submission, we have a fantastic web-based software called DDX. And it's web-based, which means you can access this anywhere. Included within DDX is a phenomenal 3D viewer, which allows you to see the time lapse of the treatment plan from start to finish, allowing you to view it from all different angles. This is also what I would consider one of the biggest selling points to your patient as well. So when you're sitting down with the patient during the consultation, you can use this treatment viewer to show them their before and afters. And this is actually available as a link that you can send to your patients for them to review at a later date as well. Now, before we jump into pricing in the next slide, I want to quickly highlight that everything I've talked about up to this point of receiving a treatment plan to review, this is all completely free of charge. We are currently the only company right now that is not charging for treatment processing. And that is going to be a huge aspect when getting your feet wet in the clear aligner space. You know that it's a relatively low risk investment to make, as there are no startup fees, no costly courses needed to get started. Which is really, really nice. So basically, it's free treatment processing. You get to go through the entire process of up to the point of receiving a treatment plan to review at no cost. And that's a great way of kind of seeing if you like the software and if the product is a good fit for you as well. And we'll move on to the next slide. So thank you. So here is our pricing structure. We essentially offer 3 different packages. We've got Express, Light, and Standard. Express is less than 10 steps. Light is less than 20 steps. Standard is less than 30 steps. Each package will have a set of retainers included in the price, as well as a refinement included as well. The Standard is a little bit different in that it comes with a 3-year assurance plan. So essentially, it basically means that they have unlimited refinements for 3 years. And those are the respective costs associated with each package on the right there. If we're comparing this to one of the leading competitors, we are looking at about a 10 to 20% in cost savings. And of course, doctors can mark this up to whatever price they see fit, but usually what we see is about 2 to 4 times what you are paying. So it can really range from $2,500 for a simple case in what you charge your patient, up to $6,500 or more. And location, depending on where you are, may also be a factor in deciding how much you decide to charge your patients as well. And on the next slide, thank you, Bill, I wanted to quickly highlight our partnership with Oral-B. So included in all of the Reveal packages mentioned in the previous slide, whether it's Express, Light, or Standard, the patient will also receive the new Oral-B IO Power Brush, which is valued at $350, which is another great value added to your patients. I own this power brush and I can vouch that it is an extremely great toothbrush. It's pretty much like the Lamborghini of power brushes. So another great added value for your patients. In addition to that, we have some great promos to get you started as well. So you get 30% off your first case, 20% off your second case, and 10% off your third, which is another great ad and truly a great opportunity to get your feet wet within aligner therapy. So feel free to connect with your local Henry Schein rep if you would like to get started. In addition to what's listed here as discounts, we also have a one-time staff discount. It's a 40% promotion that's offered to somebody who may be interested in trying out Reveal within your practice. I will note that that is the only package that unfortunately does not come with the power brush, but any other package does include it. Awesome. So moving on to the next slide, we'll switch gears and talk a little bit about our Henry Schein brand portfolio and how we can use items in this area to help you save money. As Bill mentioned, one of the biggest areas to increase your valuation is saving money in supplies. And I know people are already doing this proactively to the best of their ability. Some people have teammates strictly dedicated to procurement. Now, Henry Schein Brands is an area of the company that is being heavily invested into, where we practically have new products coming out almost weekly. I want you to think of Henry Schein Brands private label as it's essentially a Kirkland brand if you shop at Costco, or PC brand if you shop at Loblaws. And within this portfolio, we offer a lot of high quality products at much more affordable pricing to our customers. We have over 6,000 SKUs currently, and again, almost pretty much adding to that every week. And another great part about Henry Schein brand products is our money back guarantee. We stand by our products, so if there comes a time where you are not fully satisfied with your purchase, we offer hassle-free returns. And on to the next slide. This is essentially what we call a substitution report. This is another great tool that Henry Schein offers and is available to all of our customers. And this is going to be my last slide here, but I quickly wanted to highlight this. We're talking a lot about numbers in this presentation. So essentially the sub report is an incredible way for you to identify any saving opportunities today within your practice. So we're talking about areas where we can make an immediate impact to your cost savings. So what the report shows is it takes all of your purchases that you've done through Henry Schein. It is helpful if you are a dedicated Henry Schein customer, but it does take your purchase history from the previous year and it generates Henry Schein branded substitutes for all of the products you've bought. It will then highlight how much money can be saved if you were to make that change from branded product to private label. This tool is truly incredible as I worked on reports where we've seen savings north of 30 grand. Here in this presentation, we're highlighting an example where this customer saved north of 18 grand just by switching some of their products over to Henry Schein brand product. And again, I understand that not every product can be switched because maybe it's technique sensitive. But for products such as disposables, headrest covers, things like that, it is quite simple to do. So this again is a great way, a great tool to see where we can make an immediate impact on your cost savings. And if you're interested in having a sub-report pull for you, please reach out to your Henry Schein representative and we would be more than happy to get this done for you. And that's all for me. Thank you so much, Bill.
Judy, thank you very much. And I'm sure that everyone, if I've had any impact at all tonight, everyone who was looking at this last slide of yours went, oh, $18,375. They pulled out their calculator and went, shit, that would increase my practice value 110. So to your point, people don't have to change everything. And there are other things you can all do to save supplies. And your Schein rep can help you with some ideas in that regard other than substituting products. But even if you only got half of this, that's $55,000 more when you sell your practice. That'll go into your retirement fund, which will pay for a couple of very nice trips when all is said and done. Plus, you'll be making like 20 grand more a year or 10 grand more a year every year up until then. So thanks, Judy.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
I'm back for a minute and then I'm going to hand things over to my friend Jamie because he gets to talk about what for me is the most exciting area to be thinking about as a dentist these days. And that is, can you CAD-CAM? CAD-CAM is basically making stuff in-house that you used to buy from out of house. And if you make it in-house, it's going to cost you far less. The most common area is crowns, so CEREC or Planmeca crowns. I'm about to give you an example of that in a minute, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jamie. The thing I'll say right at the front end, though, is Maureen and I, Maureen's my wife, the dentist, have a really good friend who's a classmate of hers. Who had heard some of the bad stories about the early CEREC technology that was around many years ago, but embraced the technology more recently and has just been delighted with it. And I think Jamie can elaborate more. That the technology has come so far that even if you've looked at this and decided, that's not right for me, it's not going to get the results I want, or it's going to be too complex, even if you've tried it, it's time to try it again for the first time, as the serial commercial used to say. And it's not just about building the value of your practice. Obviously, patients love the convenience, which is going to help with patient retention and referrals, which helps with your total patient count. And the other thing, and it never fails to amaze me how few people realize this, you're losing money on lab using an external lab. Everyone, when I say that to them, goes, no, I'm not, Bill. I'm charging my patients exactly what I pay the lab. What they're forgetting is that patient's probably paying with Visa or MasterCard, and they're losing 2.5% there. They're forgetting about the costs of a 2-appointment approach to dentistry, the extra chair time, the extra assistant time, the lack of effective office utilization. There is no doubt that you are losing money on the lab portion of the crown and bridge work you're doing if you're using an external lab. And you can turn that around by bringing it in-house and look at the potential. Here's good old Pat Sample's practice. You'll recall that Pat was doing 70,000 in lab. If Pat brought 70% of that lab in-house, this still has them continuing to do some external lab. That may be a conservative number. Maybe Jamie can tell us. But that would drop the lab costs by $21,000. What does that do to the value of this practice? Well, it takes earnings up by the, what is that, the $49,000 difference. At a 6x multiple, that's got this practice now valued or selling at almost $1.7 million. That is $290,000 in increased practice value that, remember, is hugely tax advantaged to $290,000 in income. 21% increase in practice value. So if that got your attention, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Jamie, who can make this clearer to all of us, or more revealing, but Judy did the reveal already. Jamie, over to you.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Bill. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. You're definitely outlining the benefits of CAD/CAM, and I think it's pretty, pictured there for you, just what it can do when you bring a profit line like your lab in-house. And let's be honest, it's not going to be your full lab bill, like Bill said, probably somewhere in the 70–80% range, single unit posteriors. You can grow with that, but again, you're going to still be using your lab, just a bulk of it can be done in-house. And I like that question at the beginning, can you CAD/CAM? Well, then what's the CAD/CAM specialist going to say? Of course you can, right? And but there's reason behind that. The technology now, the softwares, the ease of use, where we are right now with those three things coming together, it really hasn't been seen before. So that is what's different. So as Bill mentioned, I am Jamie Sullivan, the CAD/CAM specialist for Henry Schein here in the GTA region. I've been doing so for about 10 years. Okay, and we have about 8 CAD/CAM specialists throughout Canada. So if you're not from the GTA, one of my colleagues can help you there, just kind of understand basically what's available today. And that's really what we want to find out is, over these next few minutes, I'll just highlight a little bit more about those numbers, because it is an impressive number, and we want to really dissect that and see just how attainable it is. Number 2, we want to look at why this technology, and number 3, where do I start? So those are the 3 things that I usually discuss when having introductory meetings in looking at CAD/CAM technology. I understand some may already have a digital scanner. We've seen a massive influx over the last 12–18 months in that area. And then as we look at the technology for the full CAD/CAM spectrum in-house workflows, it's just amazing what you can do now. So if we can just look at this slide here on the left, it's a little small, but the picture here is, where does that number come from? So where does the profitability start from? Well, it's laid down here in these little blocks, and this is something we can do together if you should want to. Just let your Henry Schein FSC field sales consultant know, and we can set up a time to do a quick one with you. But it really boils down to the units you're doing per month. So as this first item says here, as Bill's showing on the cursor, if this sample practice is doing 12 crowns a month, we're saying an average in-house lab bill of about $350. And that could be whether it's zirconia, multi-layered zirconia, glass ceramic, you name it, the systems can do it now. And then you times those together, and that's where you get your subtotal of $4,200 in profit. Simple, it's the same math as you work your way down, just looking at different indications within the practice. Average bridges per month, if you're doing 1 bridge a month and the lab bill is $850, well then your revenue is $850 a month. And if we go down to the implant crowns, that's a newer one within the same visit dentistry workflow that's really catching a lot of eyes and really being a great value add is the implant crown restorations. So if you're talking about $750 for an abutment and a screw retain crown, times that by 2, there's $1,500 of incremental profit into the practice that month. And if we look at the last item there on our profit metrics, this is an interesting one because it's more on the lines of if we're doing, say, four surface composites. With this technology, you can do an indirect restoration, be it an onlay and inlay, in under an hour, 45 minutes. So you could offer that indirect restoration to that patient because you have the technology to create that same visit without the need of the dreaded temporary on that onlay, as we all know. So it just really can capture some more professional fee and lab bill fee with that indirect restoration that's now possible or more apt to be possible. So your total monthly income there was $7,750. So that's a pretty big number. And again, I think that's probably 70 to 80%, as we talked about at the lab bill. And then we look at, well, where do those costs come from? If I'm integrating CAD/CAM, well, there must be some costs to this material, and there is, and that's listed all below there. So it's just the cost of the crown material, along with which is the block, along with the use of the burrs that actually machines out that crown, be it a carbide or a diamond, depending on the material. But if you're looking at $40 per unit, times that by 12, there's where you get your $480. Similar math as you look down for the bridge. The bridge block's more expensive. Abutment and crown, it's about $200 in parts and pieces. And then again, $40 for your block for your onlay. So you factor all those together. But what you're also wanting to factor in is if I go to digital from a traditional workflow, I'm not going to have any impression material. So I'm going to save there. Okay, ADA has it about 15 US, so about $20 for the impression material in the tray. No temporaries needed, okay, because it's the same visit. And no operatory turnover twice, which is a big one now, especially with, as costs have gone up for PPE. So really, that number is going to wash out those indirect or variable costs from above. And now we're just looking directly at that kind of lab bill profitability. So you add those together, and then you look at your financing. Most people finance the system. So if you're looking at about roughly a $3,600 monthly finance, take that away from your profits. That's where you get that $4,000 of monthly total profit, net profit. So that's a little worksheet that we could go through together. But I think that really just kind of in a nutshell tells you, based on those numbers, this is the profit you'd like to see or you would see. So I think if you times that bill as we do our exercise, right? Times that by 12, times that by 6, I think we're right around that 290,000 range.
Yeah, you're working with Dr. Pat Sample's practice here.
Okay.
But I know that you'd be prepared to work with any of our audience members' practices and give them a customized report.
Exactly. So that's the numbers. That's the nuts and bolts on where it comes from. That's important, but also when you look at, the technology and how that's changed, I think that's also of big importance because, in the healthcare setting, you want to provide the patient with the best. And if you just flip to the next slide here, please, Bill. I'm highlighting one here from Dentsply Sirona. It's their new product, the Prime Scan, newer product, the Prime Scan. Really because it's got some incredible technology built inside. So the scanner itself has got a very large field of view that creates such a capture image of 50,000 images per second under over 1 million data points per second. It's just so clear and so crisp that it creates a faster and real ease of use when scanning intraorally, whether it's for quadrants, full arches, you name it. As we look at some of these images, you'll see stuff that I didn't even really know was possible with the scanner when I started a few years ago. I mean, you're talking full arch. I mean, there's some edentulous scans there. Even a little soccer ball and a plush toy. I mean, before you could never get that kind of algorithm to create such an accurate picture. And speaking of accuracy, if you look at that little chart from I believe it's the University of Switzerland, precision's at about 10 microns for the Prime Scan. There's some other leading scanners there as well, but I just wanted to highlight that one because it's quite amazing the breakthrough there within the technology. So if we flip to the next slide, it starts with a capture, so it starts with a digital impression. And again, some may already have a scanner now, and that's great. Great for the patient, nice workflow. But the profitability metrics really comes in utilizing something like this one here, the Ceric Software 5. So using its algorithms and artificial intelligence to create that biogeneric or lifelike crown for the for the patient that matches up the dentition that's surrounding it. It's amazing to see how it does this. And what they've done really with this software is, in the earlier versions, maybe say it took 9-10 buttons to get to a crown. We're down to about 4. So it's about ease of use. Again, we're not trying to cut any corners here. It's just the technology that we're allowing to do it for us. Again, as Bill mentioned earlier, at no point do we want to give you something that's subpar. It's got to be as good or better than what you currently have. And I would highly encourage you to check this out and see for yourself just how good this this software and the final product actually comes out. So once you've done this, once you've created this, say crown, inlay, onlay, bridge, whatever it is, implant crown you've done, you need to manufacture that. So we do carry a couple of different products. Again, I'm just featuring one here. This is the Prime Mill from Dentsply Sirona. It can actually mill a zirconia crown in 5 minutes. Again, we talk about efficiency and ease of use. It's unbelievable to see how fast that's that's created a same visit crown now just based on the technology advancement. Whether it's, like I said, the material of choice, again, you're not having to pick and choose and having to be, sorry, you can pick and choose. You don't have to be stuck with any material. It will do any material that you're requesting from the lab, other than gold right now, just because it's, that one's a little tougher to mill, a little more expensive to mill the gold crown. But if you move forward, Bill, please. The goal is to have a look at it, right? So we can talk about it, but at Henry Schein, we've created an experience where you can come and check out this technology, with yourself and your staff member of choice, and really kind of put it to the test. So it's led by a dentist. So the dentist itself will manage and kind of do the curriculum. We'll be there as support, but it's a chance to ask peers, what they've done, how they've used it, but really test and see what the final products and workflow looks like. So very proud of this little, this course we've put on. Have got great feedback. It's 2 days, world-class facility. Ask your Henry Schein rep if when the next one that's coming up, but we've had great feedback on this. So I really encourage you to take advantage of that. Covered by Henry Schein. It's a 2-day wonderful experience to see this technology in action. Okay, and then we'll just move over to the next one. So we talked about the scanning and we talked about manufacturing. I hope the theme is there's profit there, but on top of profit, there's ease of workflow. There's extra patient services that you can provide. And there's a new technology that's fun, engaging, and dynamic for the practice. As I say that, I can't leave out 3D printing. So that's something that's come really blaring through the door in the last, I'd say 12 months, especially within the dental clinic. The laboratories, most laboratories have at least one 3D printer. So I was a little skeptical in how it fit into the clinical setting. But now with the price point coming to a point where it makes a lot of sense. So that's number one. Number two, they're so efficient now and clean in their operation. It's no longer a messy kind of tedious task. They're very synergistic in how they print and go from print, wash, cure. So I think you really want to look at 3D printing as well. And if I could leave you with kind of a metrics and theme of today's presentation, if one night guard costs about $6 to print, think about the return on investment there. So I think there's definitely some runway for 3D printing, and we're happy to help you there and have those discussions. Thanks, Bill.
Hey, yeah, thank you, Jamie. And some of you may sense we've done this once before. We did it last night for an audience out west, and you really have motivated me to build in a second profit improvement slide for printing. We'll work together on that for the next time. I wanted to thank all of you just before I move on here. I've been tracking our attendance, and apart from one person who left, everyone who joined us at the start is still here. So hopefully that means you're getting some real value out of this. We're rounding the final turn here. I've got a few more things to share with you. And then I'll bring Jamie and Judy back and we'll do some Q&A. So again, just a reminder that if you want to submit questions, there is a Q&A button on your Zoom screen. You may have to move your cursor around or go looking for it, but find it, submit a question, and we'll deal with it very shortly. So one of the things you may have sensed is this isn't an either or thing. If you do a couple of these things, it can be quite additive. And if it's additive, the numbers get even bigger. They can add up in a real big hurry. So this takes our examples that we've gone through and looks at an increase in practice value if you did all 5. Now, not all, some of you are already doing a bunch of these things. There may be one of you out there who's doing all of these things, and hopefully you're feeling very good about it. And you've already got a tremendously valuable practice. But as we add these together, the 15% recall improvement, it's going to add 150,000. The ortho change, you're up by 366 because we're now up to $1.7 million. Throw in in-house crown milling, we're at least at 210. Supply costs have got us up to 2.1 million and then up to 2.4 million with the attrition reduction. And frankly, I'm conservative because if I put the attrition in up front and all of these numbers were on a bigger patient base, it would be an even bigger increase. So, suffice it to say, you don't have to do all of these things, but the more you look at that you're comfortable doing in your practice, and that you believe will benefit your patients, or Jamie put it brilliantly, we want to make sure you're delivering at least as good a patient experience at a lower cost, or ideally a better patient experience at a lower cost. And if you're a little uncertain about some of these things, your Henry Schein field service sales consultant will be happy to talk to you, bring in the experts, be it people like Jamie or Judy or myself to talk to you some more about some of them. So let's jump out of building your EBITDA into 2 critical areas that I always like to talk about, because far too often I see people who've screwed this up. The most tragic cases are when we get called in on an estate sale, and the family's not going to get the money for the practice that the dentist built that they should have. And many other times people leave it too late. So to the extent that all of you are hopefully a couple of years away from selling, you haven't left anything too late. Because we can add real value by educating you now that we can't if you're ready to sell right now. We can still sell your practice for a very good price, but you can see many of these things take a while to do. One of the most common mistakes we see is people not being able to use their capital gains exemption. My intent today is not to give you a tax course. I've done enough math. If you add taxes to math and accounting, it just doesn't work out. But I am going to give you the key things to watch out for, and I'm going to encourage you all to make sure you're getting expert accounting advice. When you sell a business, you can sell the shares in the corporation that's operating the business, or you can sell the assets of the corporation. Even if you are not incorporated, and usually in a group this size, there's 1 or 2, you can incorporate literally the day before you sell and get your capital gains exemption. I'm going to show you the benefit of that in just a second. Some of you will have accountants who say, no, you can't do that. You got to wait 2 years. If your accountant tells you that, get a new accountant, because they don't know what they're talking about. If your accountant tells you you won't be able to sell shares, buyers only want to buy assets, get a new accountant. They don't understand the dental world. The great thing about the profession you chose and the business you're operating is, even in an environment of rising interest rates, there are still far more buyers than sellers. We are still in a seller's market. So you get to dictate the terms. And if you want to sell shares because you benefit from selling shares, 99% of the time you'll be able to sell your shares. That wouldn't be true for many of the other businesses your accountant may be working with, which is why some of them don't get this. But if your accountant's one of the mainline dental accountants, they'll already have you well set up here. But just to make sure you're well set up, and why you want to be concerned about this is I want to walk you through a simple example. Here, Pat's sample did a bit of what we talked, not a lot, but Pat's practice is now worth $1.5 million instead of the $1.36 million it was before. And if Pat sells in an asset sale, then Pat will have a capital gain of $1.5 million, the selling price of the practice. That gets taxed at the capital gains tax rate, which is half of your normal income tax rate. So if you're in a high tax jurisdiction like Ontario, that could be as high as 27%. So if you sell for $1.5 million, you're writing a check to the government potentially for over $400,000, and you're only going to pocket $1.095 million. That would be tragic when you could keep most or all of that money yourself. How do you do that? Well, you sell in a share sale. This is a limited example because in this example, we're applying Pat's personal lifetime capital gains exemption, which today or in 2022 is at $914,000. Those are indexed to inflation. So it's going to go up by the rate of inflation next year. That'll push it above 950. Will easily be above $1 million in the next 2 years, I believe. Even if you've used some of your capital gains exemption before, you may have more to use now. People also often make the mistake of thinking they can only use one capital gains exemption. The reality is, if you were structured right from the start, you may have your parents as shareholders, your spouse is probably a shareholder, and you may even have your kids as shareholders. Again, there's a common misconception the kids have to be over the age of majority. They do not. So we sell practices. I recently sold a $4 million practice, 100% capital gains exempt, because the dentist, their spouse, one parent, and a kid, 2 kids actually, applied their capital gains exemptions. There are pros and cons to that you definitely want to talk through with your accountant. But the bottom line is you can shelter everything if you're structured right from the beginning. If you're not structured right now, you're somewhat limited, but you'll definitely get this $913,000 exemption. Remember, that's going up next year. So how does the math work? Well, you've got your selling price of $1.5 million. Capital gain is the same, it's $1.5 million. But your exemption allows you to shelter $914,000 roughly tax-free. So the taxable capital gain is only $586. We apply that same tax rate to it. The taxes have gone from $405,000 down to $158,000, and the net proceeds you've got from the sale are up by roughly $250,000. With additional exemptions, and as things track forward in the future, that savings goes up and up. The tragedy is many people we deal with don't qualify. The keys to qualifying, and it's a bit more complex than this, but these are the tests. At no point in the 2 years prior to a sale can the corporation, if you're incorporated, have more than 50% of the value of the business in passive assets. This is the one people get tripped up by all the time. They and their accountant or financial advisor have left a lot of money in the corporation because that's tax advantaged money and you want to grow it in the corporation. But that means you end up with passive assets in the corporation, things like cash, investments. If you own your building and it's in your corporation and other tenants make up more than 50% of the rent or square footage, then it's a passive asset. You may have borrowed money from the PC that you owe back. That's a passive asset. You may have a life insurance policy in there. It's really important you talk to your accountant about this. If you've got an issue that's going to prevent you the significant savings of using your capital gains exemptions, there are tools to get it out. There's something called the butterfly. There are asset strips. Those can solve most issues, but they take generally a minimum of 2 years. So again, this is why it's so important that you get expert accounting advice. And while these butterflies and asset strips aren't free, they sure as heck don't cost you the roughly $250,000 you're going to save by using just one capital exemption, let alone multiple ones. And then the other thing that we see all the time is people who don't have their contracts ready for a sale. And this kind of ties back to that EBITDA that we were talking about earlier, because contracts are the basis on which you operate your business. Most people don't think of them that way. They signed their lease 4 years ago. They haven't looked at it since. It's not a day-to-day part of their business. They did or did not do staff contracts years ago, or associate contracts years ago. They don't think of them as an ongoing business thing the way you think of revenue and expenses. But they are what enable that revenue and expenses. And we see problems all the time. When we do an appraisal, we look for them. But you can do this by talking to experts yourself. First of all, if you have an associate, have somebody who knows what they're doing check that contract. Some associate agreements are transferable when you sell your practice. Some go with the practice in a share sale. But 2 or 3 times a year, I see one where the contract is immediately null and void when you sell the practice. Therefore, the restrictive covenant is null and void, and the buyer ain't buying your practice if the associate can go into direct competition with them. If you don't have an associate contract at all, that's even more critical. If you have employees, it is definitely better that they have contracts than not. Your practice is still saleable if they don't have them. You're going to have some post-sale liability that we can talk about if somebody wants to know, ask the question. But even if you do have contracts, and many people are going, yeah, I'm checking all the boxes on this one, Bill. If your contracts were done more than 2 years ago, go back to the lawyer that did them. Hopefully you didn't borrow some other dentist contracts. We see that problem all the time. But go back to the lawyer that did them for you and ask about the Waxdale precedent. This is a precedent that kind of shook the foundations of employment law, came out heck over 2 years ago now. And it has basically invalidated, my count would be about 60% of all contracts that were done before 2020. So check that if you're relying on contracts to reduce your post-sale liability and give you more staffing flexibility. The last one is the area where we definitively see the most problems. If you have a landlord, please understand that they are not your friend. Heck, even if they're your golfing buddy, they're probably not your friend when it comes to business. The biggest problems owners have getting full value for their practice is their lease. You need to have a minimum of 5 years tenancy certainty, ideally more at all times. So if you've got a 5-year lease and 1 5-year renewal and you're 3 years in, you've only got 7 years. That's an issue. So you always want, if it's a 10-year lease, a 5-year renewal, or 2 5-year renewals at the end, or a 5 plus a 5 plus a 5. If you have a demolition, termination, or relocation clause in your lease, and every year we run into a number of dentists who do and don't realize it, that could cost you $400,000 in practice value. So make sure you get your lease reviewed by somebody who knows what they're doing. And if you've got time before you sell, there's time to do things to address any issues you do have. If you wait until the end, you're just living with the consequences, and that can cost you, well, in this example, up to $400,000. We've seen it cost people more. So the title of this slide is, if it feels like you've been drinking from a fire hose tonight. If much of what we covered, you kind of went, gee, I think that makes sense, but I'm not really sure. There are lots of people available to help. Everything I've walked through is part of an appraisal. If you engage us to do an appraisal for you, everyone always asks at that point what they cost. They can be as little as $3,795 for a basic income valuation. You can get those updated every 2 years for under $1,000. Prices do go up from there depending upon the type of appraisal we're doing. But everything we just showed you would be included in the $3,800 appraisal we do. The key thing is this, a proper appraisal, and you see it on the slide, isn't just a number. It should be an appraisal of the opportunities to enjoy an even better retirement. If the appraiser you're thinking of using isn't going to walk you through the opportunities to build your practice value, if they're just going to give you a number, you're not getting what you should be paying for. We always advise people, get an appraisal 5 to 10 years before selling, because on that timeline, we can catch some of the problems, we can identify the opportunities, and for the cost of an appraisal, if it can literally put hundreds and hundreds of thousands more into the value of your practice, it's one of the best investments you'll ever make. So that is the end of the plan presentation, and we've got, we've had one more person leave, so there are a bunch of you still out there, and frankly, what's more fun for Jamie, Judy, and I is answering your questions rather than just coming with our canned remarks. For those of you who want to ask a question privately of one of us, get your camera or screenshot this on your computer. There are our contact details. We'd be happy to talk to you. I'd have put the list of all of the tier 3 regional reps up here, but there are way too many. And there are 4 times or probably 10 times as many Henry Schein people. But we've got people in your area who would be happy to talk to you, not about just this general conceptual presentation with a generic example, but how it might apply to you, and whether you might have an opportunity to put 100, 400, or $1 million more into your retirement. And if we go back to that first slide of the couple dreaming about what they could do or already living that dream, it's something we'd urge you all to consider, because it makes our job so much more rewarding when we can help people with that. So we'll open the audio. Chaitan's still here. I think he can open the audio. If you want to stick a question up just on the Q&A tab, we don't have any there yet, but we're eager to answer any questions you've got, and feel free to follow up with any of us. So Chaitan, if you could open the audio and let us know the audio is open. Hopefully we didn't lose Chaitan. We may have lost Chaitan. If you've got it's open. Chaitan's sent me a message. So anybody who's got a question out there, feel free to ask. Okay, let me quickly check. Our attendance is still strong, so either you're all very shy and waiting for somebody else to ask the first question, or we may have a tech problem. Try using that Q&A function on your screen if that's the case. No. Oh, I think I hear somebody ready to ask us a question. Go ahead. No, it was Jamie or Judy moving at their screen. Let me see here. Maybe the counter takes a while to drop down. We'll give you another minute. Just as we're waiting for any questions, I'm going to ask Jamie and Judy, do you guys have any last comments?
No, Bill, I think, like you said, the contact information's there. If it's, if there's any specific questions, we're happy to answer. Depending on your region, you can always email me or call me, and we'll make sure you get the right person. But yeah, it's on my end, with the CAD CAM space, we're happy to help investigate and see what solutions might be best for you, because it is such a really prime time right now for digital. So looking forward to it, and thanks everyone again for your time tonight.
I'd
Okay.
also like to echo the same thing. I just want to thank Bill and everybody who attended the webinar today. My contact is available to you if you have any questions. And so I cover the BC area, but we have support all throughout Canada. So feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with to the proper channels. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone, have yourselves a great night. And
Okay,
wait a second, I just spotted, we do have a question. Are there any plans for Henry Schein to partner with TerraCycle to recycle all of the clear aligners and 3D printing waste that is being produced? Judy, well, that it's 3D printing and clear aligners, so either of you can answer that.
That's something I'd have to check. That's a great question. I'm not positive myself, but Dr. Bond, yeah, I think I have your contact, but I could definitely check that for you because that is a great question. Something that I'd have to ask some of the higher ups just to see exactly where we are with a program like that. But I like it's a great idea. Yeah.
Well, there we've closed the one open question we had. So we thank you all for your time tonight. And if you've got any questions, if you want to follow up on any of this, just give us or one of our colleagues a call. We'd love to help. Good night, everybody.